Hi, Tyson Fury here. Just a quick one. I've been speaking to the lawyers today and Usyk's people are talking about rematch clauses and all that bollocks. Here's one to up the antes. How about there is no fucking rematch clause for both of us? Let's up the antes completely. Never worry about what's in the future and how many more dollars you can get after you've been defeated. Worry about the fight, April 29th, no rematch clause, the winner takes the glory, the loser goes home with his dick in his hand. How about that? Agree to that, you fucking bitch.
If you can't pull up £1 million, don't ring my phone. But I will fight any of them. Any of them. Because the last thing I've lost is my nuts. Ring my phone, you boys. Bums need not apply. Big boys only. Because I'm telling you, only a quality man can beat John Fury, and then he's got his work cut out. But all them quality guys, I'm not knocking them. World champions. Credit to the sport. Tried and tested. Holyfield, Tyson, Lewis, Riddick Bowe. All great men. You know, it'd been an honour for me to share the ring with them. What they was then, they ain't now. And I believe I got the edge in conditioning. Forget about the way I look. I'm as fat as a pig. A man as fat as butter knocked out AJ with a body like a Greek god. Little fat Ruiz, big up little fat Ruiz. Credit to all the fat guys out. I'm fat, yeah, but I can do 10k every day and I can hit that bag for 30 minutes out stop and I can spar 6 rounds with anybody. Forget how I look. It's that there look and them down there. And I got bags of both of them.
Yeah, you were saying, Julian.
Yeah, I've always liked Gary Matthews. I like the style of teaching that he's got, and I've never seen him coach in a gym. I only have to see the kids he's training to see the things that he's doing with them. I guess it's a coaching thing, you spot that. But I've always liked Tommy Coyle. I know Tommy Coyle well, but who can forget that?
Oh, there. Oh, that Gary Matthews lower than boom.
Who can forget that shot he detonated on Tommy Coyle's chin?
Everybody went.
He probably hadn't won a round up until that point.
He couldn't hear anything after he knocked him out.
It was an absolute
silence.
It was a howitzer, wasn't it? It was that thing. You know, people always say there's a cliche in boxing. It only takes one punch with heavyweights. It only takes one punch with anybody if they know how to throw it.
It does. All right then. Well, good luck to Dennis with BBC deal.
Yeah.
Fight Zone being free now. Fight Zone's free, which is good, isn't it? Good luck to him and Stevie Crump and Max, Anna Rankin and Keenan Wainwright and the rest of them. Usyk Fury free. Usyk's come out. And well, I'll let you tell the story on this.
Well, I can't keep up. I was thinking last night the fight was dead in the water because it was 50-50. And then Frank Warren actually said quite a while ago that's 50-50 is a fair deal, let's do it. And then it suddenly became 60-40. And then we heard Tyson, didn't we, saying 70-30 and that's all you're going to get. And for every day you don't sign, we're going to take 1% off that offer. And then Usyk did what nobody expected him to do, which was turn around and say, let's do it, with a small caveat himself about $1 million going to the Ukrainian people. And I just thought that was such a classy thing to do. I then thought that fight's not going to happen. I'd also heard the management and the promoter of Usyk saying he didn't think there was enough money in the pot with what Tyson Fury was asking and what the fight was going to generate. So I thought that was an interesting one. Certainly, he said even if 10% goes to Usyk, there's not enough money in the pot. So I don't know how much Tyson's been asking for. So then initially last night I thought the fight's not going to happen. Someone said now Tyson Fury's done a video saying, I'm training, I'm on a run, I only need 6 weeks for this fight. So is the fight going to happen? I just don't even know now. My instinct is it won't happen on the 29th of April. But the noises that people are making is that it will happen on the 29th of April.
Yeah, well, it is a good fight, so let's agree, we both agree it's a good fight.
Really, really good fight.
How they've gone about it, is Usyk a bit daft, accepting 30%, and he's got 5 of the 6 belts, and he's getting 30%. How messed up is that?
Well, it's not relatively new. So, you know, one of my heroes, Larry Holmes. So when Larry Holmes he'd been 2 years heavyweight champion of the world, there was...
Nobody know we were.
No, Ali called him out. And when Holmes fought Ali in 1980, Larry Holmes got $5 million and Ali got $8 million.
Yeah, give him 7 though, didn't he?
So the challenger got more than the champion. And then, as you know, when Larry Holmes in June 1982 fought Jerry Cooney, Holmes was a defending champion, 4 years heavyweight champion, and both got 10 million each. So you have sometimes these situations where
they built that up on race, didn't they?
They absolutely built it up on race. They unashamedly called him the Great White Hope. I mean, you couldn't say that now, could you?
Oh my God.
You definitely couldn't say that now. We'll get to a stage where we can't even assume someone's gender, to be honest. I mean, the Great White Hope was distasteful, to be fair. But, you know, Larry Holmes twice took the short end, and maybe Usyk is just saying, do you know what? I'm a fighter. I am about legacy. I mean, if you look at the Usyk, you know, he went into the Muhammad Ali tournament, didn't he? You know,
Yeah.
I think there's something about fighters who go into these tournaments. They'll take on anybody. They've got a different mindset to those guys who are really good, but they're always looking for a deal. Yeah. And Fury will only ever do what Fury wants to do. He is the best heavyweight on the planet. Never said he wasn't. But disappointing that they'll haggle over a few million and he wants 70%. And with Tyson, you just don't know. But what I do know, and as of Saturday, today, there's no ink on the contract, and anything can happen in heavyweight boxing. Anything can happen with boxing. The big fights we've wanted over the last few years we haven't got. So let's not count our chickens, and this fight's not going to happen until we're a week or two away. Then I'll really believe that it's going to happen. But right now, until I see the contracts have been signed, the tickets are on sale, I don't believe it.
Yeah. Well, if Fury fights Usyk, because there's still a chance it could. There's less than 7. It's less than 6 weeks to fight week, isn't it?
Yeah, 6 weeks today.
Yeah, to fight week. So, will Fury end up putting Usyk on the moon with them other 100 guys that his dad put on the moon? On the ground. Hot bang.
Stylistically, it's a really good fight. I always believe the analogy that size doesn't matter. Size only.
As long as you've got a big arse to bang it in with.
Well, possibly. So size doesn't matter when skill. Or it only matters when skill levels are equal.
Yeah.
So if skill levels are quite equal, size does matter. So I predicted both times Usyk would school Anthony Joshua. I've got no doubt about that. He would beat him easy both times.
How many rounds would you give Joshua out of the 2 fights? 5 max?
5, 6 max.
Big magazine are giving him 4, I've given him 5.
Yeah, I might give him 6 if I'm.
Talking more than double that.
Couple of swing rounds, but what you got now with Fury is we don't have equal size, but we've got quite a close skill set.
Yeah.
I think Usyk's probably slightly better technically. I think Fury can turn it into the street more than. I mean, Usyk's a tough guy, but what I mean is, you know, Fury can fight inside as well. He's really, really good inside. I mean, even the knockout of Cunningham, you know, just that little short shot. He's better at close ranges. Fury. He's massive.
Like he was strangling him with his forearm.
It was a clever little sneaky little shot.
It was a sneaky little move, wasn't it?
It was a good
behind
move.
referee's eye line.
Yeah, and I think up close, Fury would be a better fighter. I can see Usyk pinning him a little bit with the speed, but I do think Fury will be just too big for him. And anybody who says, hang on a minute, he said size doesn't matter. Size doesn't matter when skill levels Roy Jones Jr. and John Ruiz, when they're on different planets in terms of skill. Yeah, but when there's little between the two fighters, I'll always go with the bigger fighter.
Yeah. Shane McGuigan says that if Fury and Usyk don't happen, that they'll take the Usyk fight with Dubois. But in my opinion, Fabio Wardley beats Dubois.
Well, I'm confused with Dubois because we were told this injury might take at least 6 months before he can start training.
That's him took out at 5 in lane, isn't it?
Yeah, so
is it with Joyce Zhang and then Joyce Usyk if Fury done that?
So I don't even know if Dubois is in the gym. I don't follow it close enough to care.
Yeah.
But if they're talking about Dubois being the mandatory, they said it was an ACL injury. You know, no one's making excuses saying he didn't get dropped. The punch put him over. Yeah. There clearly was problems with the leg. But that type of injury can be very, very complex and need a lot of physio and rehabilitation. So I don't know if Dubois could even be ready for an April or May fight.
I don't think he could.
I do.
I'm not a big fan of his, to be honest. I think he's been back to back.
You know I've never rated him. You know I don't rate him. He's a knockout defeat waiting to happen. I'll tell you why. Nice kid, strong. He doesn't have a great boxing IQ. He really doesn't. He throws a jab, a 1-2, a 1-2 left hook, a right hand left hook. He doesn't throw anything else apart from those 3 sets. But he can't hold a shot.
No.
He can't hold a shot.
So Joe Joyce is in position, WBO, Ergovic IBF and Dubois at WBA. Who would you say would get the fight with Usyk if Fury pulls out the injury or what, any of his shenanigans? Because there's bound to be more ups and downs in the next 6 weeks, isn't there?
I don't think Dubois will take Usyk for 2 reasons. One, I've mentioned, is potentially still not fully recovered from his injury. 2, Usyk would retire him. Yeah. I can't envisage a bigger mismatch in heavyweight boxing than Usyk.
But maybe Bricktop might want to cash him out after that Lorana performance.
He might want to cash him out with your Shane McGuigan. You have a WBA interim title, you could trade off that for a little bit.
Yeah.
As a coach, you don't want one big cash out fight, you want 4 or 5 fights to keep you there, don't you?
Yeah. So if Fury and Usyk don't fight next, if they don't, and you don't think they will, so let's look at that scenario. What's your opinion today?
Just my opinion. Yeah.
If Fury don't fight Usyk next, and he don't fight AJ next, Joyce or Wilder, who could buy into any other fight? Because there ain't anybody, is there?
There was 60,000 of them, weren't they, at Tottenham?
What, for White?
For Chisora.
Oh, Chisora's down there for Chisora.
I think there was a thing that did. Listen, best way to answer this.
Oh, for White. Oh no, 91.
I always think of what you said about Fury fans. You said to me about Tyson Fury fans, they're fanatical. They are fanatical. So I'll tell you now, right? Whenever I say something on social media, on YouTube about Tyson Fury that's positive or constructive, or say he's the best fighter in the world, is this best fighter of the generation, no one says anything. If I ever say anything about Tyson Fury that's remotely looked as like criticism, the fact I said Lennox Lewis would knock him out, and I truly believe that, people, you would think you had like done the biggest sin in the world. The Fury fans are massively fanatical. They're like AJ fans. There's boxing fans and boxing people, but there's something about this. You're an AJ fan, like you're Rolling Stones or you're the Beatles. You can't love them both.
Fury's Rolling Stones, isn't it?
Yeah, Fury's Rolling Stones and AJ's the Beatles. And it's just this thing that if you say anything about them, you get called this. What's this word?
This group come out and attack you, don't they?
You're a hater. You're a hater. I'm like, I've just said Fury's the best fighter of this generation. I'm a hater.
That's a bit like me when I sent Paul Smith a tweet when I was a Paul Smith groupie saying, "Good luck in your fight against Andre Ward." And he blocked me. He knew he wasn't going to win anyway.
It's just bizarre, isn't it? And there's just something about Fury. So Fury could probably fight the UFC. Well, he's not a UFC guy now, is he? Could probably fight the MMA guy. People would pay to see this. We've just seen his brother fight a couple of weeks ago. People will pay to see this stuff, mate.
That's what I want to get to on my last question on this. Fury could basically, in my opinion, fight 4 times a year against top 15 guys and bin the belt, red belt or whatever belt. Bin his status and just say, "Look, I'm the People's Champion, the Gypsy King. I don't need a belt. I'm bigger than boxing." If he wanted to,
he could do that. I think as soon as he's unified, you're right. The belts are effectively meaningless, aren't they? Because you become the best fighter in the world. We saw this. There was a period of time where I think Barrera and those guys were not really worried about the belts. They were just putting those big fights on. And there's something about that. But at the moment, we want to see a unification because the belts are a joke. But Fury could do that. He could do a Floyd Mayweather. He could take his destiny into his own hands. But the thing with Floyd was he still had a trusted circle around him. But the circle he had around him were very, very smart people, very smart business people. And I don't know if Tyson's got people around him who are as smart as who Floyd had around him.
What do you think about it being at Wembley? Because, you know, they're coming out now saying, yeah, well, we told you we were going to have it in England and it's about England and that, but that's only because the Saudis turned their back on them, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know what happened with the Saudis, whether they said the stadium might not be ready. I don't know what the reason it wasn't in Saudi for, but look, it's not about the fans. Yeah, Tyson's had the 3 fights with Wilder, they've all been abroad. You know, the 3rd fight with Wilder, Tyson was a defending champion, he could have done that fight in the UK.
Yeah.
It's about cash. It's not about anything else, it's not about legacy. It's not about legacy, these guys aren't concerned with legacy. It's about cash.
Hard cash, ready.
Cash.
It's about readies. Right. So, who are you going to get to pick to win? I'm going for. It's one of them, isn't it? It's 50-50, isn't it? I'm going to go. I want Usyk to win because I think I like what he stands for.
Yeah.
I like what he stands for. I want him to win. But, like you said, a good big and beats a good little. But I think it's his hardest fight. But if he does Usyk, he's only 3 or 4 fights away from being an all-time great, isn't he? If he beats Usyk and wins them other 3 or 4.
I think what we have to start to do, this is me, old school me, we have to start to recategorise modern greats. I think modern greats and all-time greats are 2 different things now. The reason I say that is because we're never going to have a heavyweight who has 25 title defences like Joe Louis. We're never going to have a fight like Henry Armstrong who wins 3 effectively undisputed championships and held them at the same time.
Think Canelo will do something similar?
Yeah, and we're never going to have a Roberto Duran who was like at one point 71-1, and we're never going to have Ray Leonard fighting.
He won 89 and 0 and 1 or something, or 2 Chavez.
Yeah, Julio Cesar Chavez, and when Ray Leonard fought Wilfred Benitez, it was his 11th fight that year.
Frankie Randall done him, didn't he?
Yeah, he certainly did this. Yeah, the Frankie the Surgeon. So what we've got to do is this: we've got to recategorise greatness in the modern age, and we say, right, longevity. That's kind of out the window because guys are now retiring after 35 fights. We've got to take those things out. We've got to say numbers and records, all that's gone. So what you have to do as a great fighter now is you have to beat the best and prove that you're absolutely number 1 in your generation. And I think Fury will do just that. I think he's not the greatest CV, but he's got 2 really solid.
He's beat everybody he's been in with.
He's got 2 really solid names on his CV.
He's so he has fought, isn't it?
Yeah, look, he's beaten fighters in their backyard as an underdog.
Well, let's look at it like this. You fought Vladimir, he had to go to Germany, so don't give me all.
Everybody goes to Germany.
You had to go there. Wilder, Fury couldn't draw flies when he fought Wilder the first time, so he had to go out there. So stop making out that you went on the hard road. You had no choice but to go on the hard road.
And look, if you look at, there is an argument, and I'm going to get shot down here because it looks
by Fury power
by the fanatical Fury fans, right? There's an argument that Fury didn't deserve the shot against Vladimir because he hadn't beaten anyone. No. People will fall over at that.
He knocked it back 3 times.
Fury hadn't beaten anybody when he fought Klitschko, and anybody who now is going to turn around and in comments and list 6 or 7 names, don't have a day off.
He only beat Steve Cunningham a cruiserweight before then, and it were a life and death.
Yeah, but Fury proved his worth by a really good win over Klitschko, but it was a poor fight, and there was like 60 odd punches to 70 odd punches landed, so it was a poor fight, but ultimately the 2nd and 3rd fights with Wilder are what everybody's going to remember him for, because certainly the 3rd fight, I mean, this guy can hang tough guy. Fury's a tough guy, and he's got some, you know, the knockdown, the first Wilder fight, no man had a right to get up from that knockdown, so you can't knock him as a fighter. He's a fighting man. I just wish he'd fight more often against better opposition. He's only made 3 title defences, and he first became heavyweight champion in 2015, so in 8 years, I know he had the time off and stuff, he had to win it back, but in 8 years he's only defended that belt 3 times. It's hardly riveting stuff, is it? It's hardly like massively impressive. statistics, but we are where we are. He's the best fighter in the world. I think he beats Usyk. I think it'll be points decision. I think he'll beat Usyk convincingly. That's my view.
Okay. Moving on then from Tyson Fury and his fight with Usyk, which we don't think is going to happen because it's too close. Callum Smith fights off. He was fighting on an Eddie show that he's off. Where's he go now? He's like the forgotten man, isn't he? Like Dylan White.
He's not done himself any favours, to be honest, has he? Because inactivity is a curse for all fighters. I'm sure there'll be someone saying he was injured and this happened and that's happened. This guy pulled out. But you know, when it was flying high in the Muhammad Ali Trophy, and it was brilliant actually, and then it just on that night against Canelo Alvarez, everything just seems to have gone wrong, doesn't it? But he was in against somebody who was an elite fighter, but inactivity is a curse, and he was largely inactive before then, and I don't even know what he's doing right now.
Yeah, Paul Smith's come out on Boxing King Media and he's done an interview and basically he said Callum's training with Buddy McGirt because for the last few years he's got into a lot of bad habits. I'm assuming that's a dig at Joe G?
Well, the thing is everybody's got an excuse when they get beat, haven't they? Generally it's the trainer.
Do you remember me saying to you, 86% of fighters who lose the first fight sack the trainer on the spot?
That wouldn't surprise me one bit.
That's worldwide.
Fighter wins, fighter gets the credit, fighter loses, it's the trainer's fault. So ultimately, these bad habits, until he fought Canelo Alvarez, we hadn't seen any of these bad habits because he was an unbeaten world champion. So Joe's obviously done something right. We only have to, okay, in terms of Joe Gallagher, yes I know Joe. In terms of Joe Gallagher, he's the most successful trainer in British boxing history. Single trainer.
Not Ingles and that, but he's done it all on his own. He's Dominic's had.
I would think if you look at domestic and other belts, I would say Joe's the most.
Got the most belts.
Most prolific, decorated coach.
30 years been going this month, isn't it? Something like that.
He's also been Ring Magazine Trainer of the Year. I mean, that's
his get out of jail free card, isn't it?
It's a brilliant accolade, isn't it? You know,
it's like an Oscar, isn't it, for Sean Bean, isn't it?
Watching the KO Magazine Annual Awards and Ring Magazine Awards as I was coming through boxing, you only dream of winning things such as that. So Joe Gallagher's great when he's great, and then when the fighter's not performing, Joe's horrendous and he gives bad advice, and it just shows the fickle nature of the industry that we're in. And Buddy McGirt, I thought Buddy McGirt was a brilliant fighter. I remember watching him, the fight with Frankie Warren and those guys, and I remember watching McGirt when he was world champion. And
Warren?
A guy called Frankie Warren he beat on the way.
Frankie Warren or Frankie Randall?
No, not Frankie Randall, Frankie Warren on the way up.
Oh,
no, I'm going back. I'm going back to Buddy McGirt.
Early 80s.
Early 80s, and he was a really good fighter.
Did he fight in that year when Freddie Roach fought?
He did, and he also fought Pernell Whitaker.
Champion, wasn't he, as well, Buddy McGirt, wasn't he?
Buddy McGirt had 2 fights with Pernell Whitaker, and that was just like boxing porn. Just the amount of skills.
Yeah.
He beat Howard Davis Jr. in the first round as well.
Who won Olympic gold?
Yeah, that's right. So he beat Davis Jr. So McGirt was a really good fighter, and I think he's a good coach. But when I see, this is just me. When I see, I like to think I've got a good eye. I watch Callum Smith. I don't see anything any different to what he was doing with Joe.
Yeah.
I think anybody who says, "Oh, we're tweaking this," we're getting to think about that.
Why do they say all this tweaking?
Do you know what happens, right? Listen. Do you know what happens, right? It's like when you're young and your personality from like being aged 3 to 7 is when 50% of your personality is formed and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Your boxing DNA is very similar. You have your amateur career where you're finding your style, you find the style that works for the amateurs. Then you have your formative years in the pros when you start to learn and develop your pro style. Then you become a seasoned fighter, and you might make slight adjustments to what you do in terms of training, and you might change 1%, 2% of your style. As you get older, you become a little more circumspect, and you might drop your work rate a little bit more. But generally, when I see Callum Smith fight, that's what I see. I don't see too much difference, and Buddy McGirt might make him feel good. He might feel reinvigorated in himself, which will make him perform. But technically, there aren't really any tweaks that is done, and this is where the PR thing comes in. This is where this Anthony Joshua thing comes in. That, you know, this new trainer is going to do this, and he's looking so much great with the new trainer. Buddy McGirt did do a really good job with Gatti to contrast what I've just said. But Callum Smith, right now, I like Callum Smith. I don't see him being a dominant force in the light heavyweight division at all.
I think Beterbiev lights him up and puts him into orbit.
Beterbiev just walked straight through him. That was the one thing we saw with Callum Smith. The one thing we saw with Callum Smith against Canelo was how easily he got backed up. And there's just something about Beterbiev would just... He's a Canelo with another natural stone on him, and he would annihilate him. Yeah. He would annihilate him.
Yeah. Should we stop for a cuppa, Julian?
Yes.
While we do the Conor Benn one?
Stop for a cuppa and we'll do Conor,
right.
my mate.
Right, coming to the... I'm not going to say the dessert or the main course, because it's something that we've been following since... I think it was September when it all came out, when it ended September, but...
In a big way.
The first drug tests were failed on July the 25th. What I want to ask you, Julian, is let's give Conor Benn the benefit of the doubt and say that's the only time he's been caught in camp. We're all this about people saying he's been on it a few years. Let's give him benefit of the doubt, because there's no proof, is there?
No proof.
There's no tests. So let's back up. So July the 24th, he's failed a drug test for clomiphene. Clomiphene is used as a masking agent when you're coming off steroids. We agree on that, don't we?
Yes.
Right. So he's coming off a cycle of steroids, and he's failed on 25th of July. So how long had he been on it? Because he just obviously must have done a cycle to be on it.
Well, they said there was trace amounts in his system.
Yeah.
So you got to assume the clomiphene's been in his system for quite... Had you taken it, Conor? The clomiphene's been in his system for a few weeks. Cycles of performance enhancing drugs, it depends what you're taking, because you don't always know what people are taking.
Yeah.
It could be Glenbuterol, Deca, it could be, growth hormone, it could be so many different things that the fighters are taking for different reasons. Some take steroids for endurance, for strength, for power. Some take it for recovery when they've had an injury. People take it for different reasons. I think it's safe to say when he initially didn't make himself available for the testing, the WBC testing, the first time around, I would be asking questions around that, and I was saying what was he potentially taking then for him not to be available. So look, this stuff can be in your system for quite a while, but we know why people now. We've all been educated what clomiphene does. It continues to trick your brain sensories, so your body still produces more testosterone than it needs, because you can't suddenly start taking performance enhancing drugs and then suddenly drop to nothing. It doesn't work like that. So you have to keep pumping testosterone in your system, albeit in a more natural way, should I say.
So that's where we're at. He's failed in July. He suggests with contamination, so they've carried on as normal. It then looks like they failed again, doesn't it? That's where it's hit the fan, and it really...
Yeah.
Do you feel the board were bullied?
One of the difficult things is, Robert Smith said, didn't he? He mentioned that we were in no position where we could just pull that fight, because we were hit with something that was a writ or a cease and desist or whatever. So the board had basically been squeezed and said, you be careful, what you tell people. That's what we can gauge from this. I think the board were in a really difficult situation. They're still sat on the information of the second test a little bit longer than when we want to hear about. It's just messy. We've covered it so many times. It's really, really messy. The first time around, I'm going to ask another question now. So Conor Benn's licence had expired, we know that. his board licence had expired. So when did that licence expire and when was the renewal? The reason I'm asking those questions is because there are certain things Ben's legal team, the British Boxing Board of Control, and VADA and UCAD will know that you and I don't know. The reason I'm saying it, when did Ben's licence, because we know his licence had expired and he decided not to renew his licence. When did his licence expire? The reason I'm asking that is because if you don't have a licence with the Board of Control and you're just part of the voluntary, the first test was part of the voluntary anti-doping testing, which is not really voluntary, is it? Because if you're going to be ranked, you've got to be tested. It's as simple as that. Did the board have any power to do anything about it if he wasn't licensed at that time by the board? And that's one of the reasons I'm saying, when did his license expire and when was it up for renewal? If that makes sense, it's like, you know what I'm saying?
Are they? There's nobody
they're not
about
telling
that.
us.
The egg one's gone away as well now. They're not saying it's.
I'm glad the egg one's gone away because
it was late, wasn't it?
It was absolutely ludicrous. Was the egg
You
one?
think they put that out to test people to see what the reaction would be?
Yeah, because Conor Benn said he never mentioned it was eggs, but 2 months before the WBC came out, 3 months before they were talking about eggs and the high protein diet. So that was lame. I'm glad that one's gone away. So it looks like what he's effectively saying, Conor Benn, is it wasn't in the system. You've messed about with the lab tests that many times, you've contaminated it. But how would contaminating tests put clomiphene as an agent in those results? And that's the bit I don't understand. To contaminate something means something's no good, it's no use, it's been touched too many times. Clomiphene doesn't just appear.
Are they just saying that somebody is working in that lab and they've touched something with dirty hands and they've got some, because they don't have gloves on, won't they?
Yeah, these are elite gold.
Do you know where Magda is in Rotherham? Do you know where that industrial estate? There's a laboratory there, isn't there?
Well, Dennis has his shows,
Yeah, well, on that industrial estate there's a laboratory there, and my kid's cousin, she's in her early 20s, she works there, and they have gloves on. Yeah. Well, it's for food
yeah,
testing,
of course it is, yeah.
Like any laboratory. And the chances of this being contamination is in the, not millions, but high-end hundreds of thousands to one in it. That's what they're saying.
Yes, but what we've also got is people keep saying there are 2 failed tests. There aren't, there are 4, because we've got an A and B sample for test 1 and an A and B sample for test 2.
What did you think to him saying that his B sample had been tested as well? There was some news about that, but then they come out and said it weren't.
They said it had been tested, it was the same result, which you would expect, wouldn't you?
But because he's had that tested, can the board not now intervene or something?
I don't know.
It's all murky, isn't it?
It's murky. I mean, one thing what was very plausible, what Gabriel Montoya said was, people are saying that they kept testing the same test 4, 5, 6 times, and he said this is what happens. You get a urine sample, you break it up into 10, 15, 20 different pieces. On one test you're testing for one thing, on another test you're testing for something else. So in terms of testing the same sample, I don't think that's what happened. I think they broke it up into different slices of that sample so they could test for something else, and that's a really plausible thing to do.
Yeah. Eddie's came out swingers in his first interview since then. He's read up for the fight and all this. He's more focused than ever and relentless and all that. But I've noticed that Tony Bellew and Darren Barker, they weren't asked any questions about Ben. And Frank Smith didn't even see it. He's the chief executive officer of Matchroom, the 13th most powerful man in world boxing, and he hadn't seen the virile Piers Morgan Conor.
Right, Frank Smith, you're not going to get me in trouble at work here. I'm just going to say there's a little tactic that you do sometimes when you're working. You get sent an email, and someone says,
Ron Julian.
Sometimes you get sent an email at work or something happens, you get a piece of information and you get asked about it and you say, I haven't seen it yet. You have, it means you haven't done anything about it.
Yeah.
Or it's a bit of an awkward one and you're supposed to have done something.
Do you have to say things like that at work?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I obviously wouldn't say that, would I'm a complete professional, but some people might turn around and say, I've not seen the email yet. And that's what Frank Smith is saying is, listen, I have seen it. It was horrendous. It was a car crash. I can't defend the undefendable, and you're going to ask me some questions now what I'm just not going to be able to answer. So I haven't seen it.
Well, when Liam Cameron got caught, he beat Gentleman, then went and got keys to his new Audi sports job out in dressing room, then burnt off in Audi, no lights on, right? Had a pint, burnt off in it, and he had no lights on, but they pulled him on Parkway Police. So he got no lights on. He goes, oh Liam, we've just been watching you on telly. You had a drink? He went, oh, I've just had a bottle of Guinness or something. He says, got no lights on. He goes, they are on all dash. Well, they are on all day in the new ones.
Yeah, they are. So mine is, yeah.
They've took him in anyway. They've given him a drink drive test on like a bus ticket thing. He's passed it and he's come back, but he's had a drug test as well.
Yeah.
But not at the police station, at the arena in Sheffield. Anyway, when it come out that he failed, then he's come in, he goes, yeah, I've heard about it, he's failed. I've gone, oh yeah, he's gone. And then he's looked at me and gone, you give him out. I ain't give him anything.
Blame you, yeah.
Blame me? I didn't even see him. I saw him and Chris go into the dressing room after, but I'm not one of them dressing room hangers on.
No.
I've been in, but I don't hang around in here all the time. I want to get out.
When my boxer's box, I was off home.
You want to get to the bar, but when Liam failed for that, then he's just washed his hands.
Yeah.
He says, nah, that's it now. But only because it was the second time he'd had a trace amount for the Sam Sheedy fight.
Right, okay.
Apparently, and Dennis didn't know about that, and he went, well, you didn't tell me about the first time.
Yeah, it wasn't open.
No, fella, didn't he? And I feel gutted for Chris because look, he's going to go with fighter, isn't he?
Trainer's always going to go with the fighter.
So Chris hasn't done no wrong in my opinion.
The kid got a very, very strict, strong ban, didn't he? 4 years.
4 years.
4 years is unheard of. I mean, Gerald Miller, Big Baby Miller, had tested for everything under the sun, and he still only got a 6 month here, 12 month there, 2 year there, and.
I thought he got 2 years, didn't he?
2 year, but it's nothing, is it? It's like nothing.
I might be wrong on that,
but 4 years. 4 years.
4 years he got, and it's 5 years next month since the last 4.
Do you know what? People hear me talk and they think I'm always crazy. Yeah, that's fine, but and they sometimes think, right, you're all about social injustice. I'm not. I'm about consistency and equality. That's all I stand for.
Yeah.
Treat that guy the same as you treat her, the same as you treat him, the same as you treat her. All right. If you're gonna give Cameron a 4 year ban, they get a 4 year ban. Just be consistent.
He already had 3 incidents. He should have got 12 by right.
Well, he'd got the peds, he'd got the coke, he'd got the lot. Refusal, the whole lot. But massive name. There's a correlation with the ban that you get and the cash that you generate, and we all know that.
All right. Well, I'm predicting that he's going to get an 18-month ban from UK. And he'll be able to fight from October this year onwards.
Yeah,
in the UK.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
they'll keep him away for this summer and bring him
I think he'll get 12 months.
So we've got 6 months to work on Smith, haven't we?
6-12 month retrospective. They'll do the fight in Dubai. He might chuck him on an undercard in the States, test the waters globally, bring him back home for a big domestic fight, and everybody will be forgiven and everybody will be forgotten. But you know what? I'll keep repeating the same thing with Conor Benn, and it's not anything born out of not liking the guy or anything like that. I don't understand why people go nuts over this guy because he's not that good.
Yeah.
I can see technically he's not that good. His chin's not that great. Either talk about him being this massive puncher, which he has scored some spectacular knockouts. We now wonder why, but his KO percentage is nowhere near what his dad's was.
No.
There's plenty of kids who have gone the distance with Conor Benn, and he's not that good. And I only have to watch him on the bag and the pads. His movement, his rhythm. If I was training, you have to be a good kid, you'd come up against him. If I was training a kid to fight Conor Benn, it'd be the easiest thing in the world.
Well, Gary Sykes will beat him.
I mean, Gary was too small for him, obviously, but Gary Sykes was 20 times better fighter than Conor Benn. He was an ABA champion. Conor Benn was nowhere near that level. But obviously a different.
Did Sykes breeze to ABA final?
Sykes, what it was the most dominating of the class of 2004, I think it was. he was the most dominant ABA champion. He beat Akash Bhatia in the semi-finals quite comfortably. He breezed through everybody else, but he fought Steve Robinson in the final. Remember they used to have the point system, and if you got 20 points ahead, it automatically stopped the fight. Gary just avoided that. He beat Steve Robinson 22-3 in the ABA final, and he gave him two standing counts. Sykes walked the ABAs, and he actually said to me, you know how modest Gary is, don't you? There was two things that Sykes always said to me, and he was open about. He hated southpaws, but the two things he always said to me was he thought the ABAs were easy, and we're talking about brilliant kids in the ABAs. The ABAs were easy, and he always thought Anthony Crolla was nothing.
Yeah.
Not being disrespectful, Crolla's a beautiful, lovely.
He was Crolla's bogeyman, wasn't he?
Yeah, he didn't think Crolla was anything. They obviously had a hard fight the first time, 10-rounder, but the 3-rounder in prize fight.
Crolla just bit down and got most out of his career like Quigg, didn't he?
Crolla was an overachiever because he was Quigg, dedicated.
Well, that was down to training. You've got to give the trainer the credit, haven't you, what they've done with them two? Because nobody fancied them, did they?
Did a brilliant job with Crolla, because you, just like Steve Mailer did with Terry Flanagan, you get a kid who's not supposed to win anything, and you take him to, in both those cases, to world titles. That's genius coaching, and credit to Anthony Crolla as well.
And Quigg.
And Quigg. And I met Crolla. I always used to have a laugh with Crolla. I've met him 10-15 times. A nice kid, you know. He's a genuinely nice kid.
They got most out of the careers, didn't they? I mean, I look at Quigg, and we all know the stories about him writing everything down, like in his diary, and sleeping at the same time every night and the same amount of hours.
He was obsessive about it, wasn't he?
And going to Berry Market at 6 in the morning to get his fish and all this, and his food and fresh and all this nonsense. He got everything out of his career, Scott Quigg. He couldn't have done any more. And then I look at kids now, who are tossing it off. Like we spoke earlier about Paul Smith, who's very opinionated, but you never got the impression that he sort of put the effort in, did you, as a fighter?
He obviously was a good fighter, was a good level fighter.
Yeah, but I always thought that people like that, with them decorated amateurs, they don't have that same energy as something like a Quigg.
No, all you have to do with a Smith, for example, is you look at him physically.
Yeah.
You know, you got a guy who had a massive fight against Andre Ward, who missed the weight not by a pound, by enormous amounts of weight, and you know that tells you everything you need to do, and he's still achieved. So someone like Paul Smith, what could he have done if he had been a really dedicated fighter?
Do you feel that there's too many now saying that, I'm Conor Benn's mate, and I'd like to think that he hadn't done it and all that, and do you think there's too much of that coming out now? And there's the other narrative, people saying, look, I don't want to hear about all these excuses. How have you got 2 failed drug tests for clomiphene in your system? Let's see the dossier. Let's not see all the smoke and mirrors and you're a nice guy and Nigel's your dad and Nigel knows peers and this and that and blah blah blah, load of rubbish. Where's this doctor that's done a runner, and why have you got clomiphene in your system, you cheating little whatever?
And this is the problem you've got, right? The first part, what you've asked me, is it makes me sick. Gareth A. Davis, I've met him, he's a lovely young man.
What's that got to do with his drug test?
Nothing. And even Simon Jordan always says, I've met him so many times, and I want him to be clean. Listen, so first of all,
I don't want him to be clean. He's not clean.
He's not clean.
He's guilty. I want to hear his excuses.
I don't think he's a lovely young man. I think he's
arrogant.
He's arrogant. He's
everything that's wrong. What's wrong with society at the moment for that age group?
I didn't listen to it all, but I listened to some of Terry's podcasts about Conor Benn, and it was bang on what Terry was saying. He was basically saying you've got this privileged brat.
Porky's Corner is proud to be sponsored by Spartan Site Solutions. They are specialists in civil engineering and demolition contracts for the construction industry. Interested parties should visit their website or contact Porky's Corner for a referral at porkycorner@mail.com.